Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Preston M. Smith. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm Preston M. Smith, at PMS Artwork everywhere on internet land and socials. I want to thank you for landing on this podcast. Whether you're a professional artist, just getting started in the art world, a collector of art, or just consider yourself a creative person, this podcast has something for you. I like to think of it as a fun way to rant and talk to other creative people about living the life of an artist, surviving and getting ahead in the art world, and enjoying your life. But most importantly, not waiting until you're dead to make it happen. All right, let's get started. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's also creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Toll bell, pay the private eye, all's well, 20th century dies. Toll bell, pay the private eye, all's well, 20th century dies.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Living Artist Podcast. That was a little homage to David Bowie again, and you might be wondering, why is he doing David Bowie again? Well, I gotta admit, been a little obsessed recently, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Not obsession, but we're going to talk about following your interest in the art world and in your art practice, because a lot of people have blocks. I don't tend to have a lot of blocks because I think I have so many interests. And when I really get interested in something, I go deep and almost obsessive about it. And I just draw so much inspiration from it. It's like squeezing all the juice out of a fruit of your choice. Enter a fruit of your choice. Yeah, but I think that's really the key to a lot of our creative input, creative output, creative inspiration is just being interested in things. And whenever you find yourself maybe in a block, sometimes it's like the obstacle is the way. It's an old philosophical problem, which is like if you're having trouble with something, a lot of times the thing in your path is the way out. It's also a book by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way. But for me, take one example, take one very recent and ongoing example, and that is my chronic pain. Something that I've been dealing with for almost 2 years now, which I can't believe, but something that really knocked me on my ass and became a major obstacle in my way of not only just creativity, but actually physically getting into the studio and being able to paint for any number of time, like an hour even. It's been a real complication for me, but I found that the obstacle is the way in this situation also, and along the lines of what we're talking about. Whatever I am interested in, I'm interested in right now is getting better and healing and processing the pain. And a lot of the chronic pain I've talked to you about comes from deeper inside me as well. And getting in touch with that and being interested in that, using that as something that's cathartic has been something that I've also applied to my artwork. A lot of my new series, a lot of my new paintings, almost all of my new paintings have been about pain and like getting through the pain and working through the pain literally on the canvas. And a lot of it has been emotional. A lot of it has been vibrant and colorful and hopeful, but it's coming from a deeper source, which is pain and working through that pain and doing a deep dive within myself. So that has been something of interest to me that has translated into my work. And it's kind of been a endless source of inspiration for me as far as getting in the studio and painting. Even though I can't really paint as long as I used to be able to paint, I'm looking forward to being able to do that again. But it's just been these shorter bursts of inspiration and creativity. And that really has been cathartic for me in every sense of the word. So for you, this might mean, something, it doesn't have to be as deep as that. It doesn't have to come from pain. It can come from pain. It can come from experience, but it can come from outside. Like it can come from David Bowie, tying in the intro here. It's something that also inspires me constantly and gets me into that creative mindset and wanting to explore different levels of my creativity and even take those and push those to different heights. I've even wanted to do some documentary stuff, and I've wanted to do that for a while, but it's also gotten me into exploring myself on a different level and exploring my creativity on a different level. But this could also be for you something even more superficial. Maybe you're into pop culture. Maybe you're into Gucci. You know what I mean? Maybe that's something that inspires you. Well, maybe your art takes on a little bit of a pop culture aspect of it. It's poppy, or maybe you're making some sort of a statement about materialism or pop culture. That can be a source of inspiration. It can be any type of music. It can be literature. In my own life, I can't even tell you how many times I have let something of interest in my life dictate my new creative output. I wrote 3 books, 2 novels and a compilation of poetry and paintings, original paintings. A lot of that was inspired by my love for reading, but also for Bukowski at the time. I just was like, I want to explore this side of myself. So I started writing poetry, and then all of a sudden that translated into a novel. And going along the lines of the obstacle is the way, I was 27 at the time when I wrote my first book, and I was going through an existential crisis. I was going through a really dark time, and I really just didn't know. I was like, what does it all mean? I'm creating, I'm painting. My work wasn't really getting out there as much as I wanted it to. I was disillusioned with my job. I hated waiting tables. I was really depressed. I was probably drinking too much, of course. And, I started walking one day, and I was listening to music, and I was thinking about a Bukowski poem that I had read recently, and I just said, you know what? Maybe I should write a book. And all of a sudden, it was like a light bulb turned on, and I was so excited. And I ran home, and I just started typing out the book. And I started typing out the first chapter, and it turned into, another chapter and another chapter, and then poems in between the chapters and stuff like that. And it was just really inspirational for me. And I never really saw that book through to its final stage as far as like really getting out there into the masses. I did self-publish it, but I didn't really market it as well as I could have. But it was something that I needed at the time that got me through that stage. It was cathartic. It was using the obstacle as the way. The obstacle was my depression and my existential crisis. What does it all mean? So I used that combined with the interest of reading and Bukowski at the time, and it just became my path. And that harnessed my creativity and pushed it in that direction. That is really powerful and can be used in so many different, variations. I would highly recommend that if you're blocked or if you're in one of those stages of like, what does it all mean? Take a moment to really think about what's going on in your life and what is your obstacle. What are your obstacles? What are your interests? And those are a major clue of like what you need to do to move forward. Maybe you need to use this obstacle and see that through and incorporate that into your art and work through it in your art, and then it'll open up in your life. Or maybe it's just as simple as you're obsessed with a director right now, or you're obsessed with a fashion line, or you're obsessed with a musician, or you're obsessed with a Netflix series that you're watching. It can be very simple. It doesn't have to be, Mozart or something. It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be Caravaggio or Marilyn Monroe. It doesn't have to be these huge icons or anything. It can be very small. It can be these little micro interests. It can be as small as you're interested in an app on your phone, or you're interested in a new process that you're learning to make coffee in the morning. I have a friend who's really interested in making his lattes and espressos in a very pure way, and getting into the steaming of the milk and the foam and the process. And it has been something that has inspired, but has also turned into a hobby, but that has turned into something that really is part of his morning routine, which gets his brain stimulated, which gets him into the creative mindset. So these little things, like if you are blocked at all, just think about all the things that are of interest in your life or the obstacles. Really, there's just an endless source of creativity out there. And that's why I always say we should never be blocked as artists. It's a limitation that you're putting on yourself most times. I think a lot of people that I know that are blocked, it's because they've decided, oh, I create in a certain way. I create in this way. I create these things. I'm a sculptor who creates figures. I'm a photographer who photographs feet. You know what I mean? You name it. I'm a painter who paints bunnies. Then maybe one day you realize, man, I'm feeling disillusioned with painting bunnies, or I'm disillusioned with sculpting figures. You don't have to be stuck in that. A lot of times this rigidity of your mindset of like, oh, I have to do this because this is what I've decided that I'm going to do as an artist. A lot of that rigidity will block you and will make you feel like, okay, I've explored this on so many levels. I need a break from it. Well, explore that angst, explore that conflict that's going on in your own mind, because it's really teaching you something. It's pushing you in a direction that you need to at least ponder what's going on inside and go, maybe I need to move this in a different direction. Maybe it's as simple as you just need a little break and you need to follow one of these little micro interests or use one of these little obstacles for a week or two or a month and just explore that and get it out of your system. And then you go back to whatever your main form of expression is. Or maybe it just takes you in a new path that's very exciting. And all of a sudden you're doing something 10 years from now that you never saw yourself doing. That's also exciting. So just don't be so limiting with your creativity. Your expansion as an artist really has and knows no bounds. You're really only limited by the amount of limiting thoughts that you have, the limitations that you put on yourself. So just expand your horizons a little bit. Use what's in front of you, whether that's an interest or an obstacle, and get out there and explore this. So I just thought this would be a fun one to talk about a little bit, something that you can always really go to. And if you're having little blocks, you can really think about this. Okay, look for an obstacle, look for an interest, and explore that. This was something I was just pondering this morning as I was doing my work. And it was kind of something that just seemed like a little bit of a light bulb, an aha moment. I thought I'd share it with you. Take care out there. Be good to each other as always. And keep on the lookout for new episodes. I've got good interviews scheduled. I've got good things happening. I hope you all have good things happening. Be creative, and we'll see you next time.
Toll the bell, pay the private eye. All's well, 21st century dies. Toll the bell. Oh, shit.
This has been the Living Artist Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I just want you to know that I appreciate you being here, and I'm grateful to be in your ears. Your art and creative life on this planet is meaningful, so thank you for sharing it with me. If you like this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on, please subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also leave me a positive review to show your support. This helps me to reach more people with the algorithmic magic and keep the show going strong. If you want to see more of what I do and check out the art that I create, you can visit my website at www.pmsartwork.com or follow me on social media everywhere at PMS Artwork. That's it for now. See you back here next time.